Welcome to Uncover the Human, where every conversation revolves around enhancing all the connections in our lives.
Whether that's with our families, coworkers, or even ourselves.
When we can be our authentic selves, magic happens.
This is Christina Amigoni.
And this is Alex Colomore.
Let's dive in.
Welcome back to this episode of Uncover the Human. Today, Christina and I are joined by our guest, who has actually appeared on the podcast before, but never as a guest, Erin Wilson. Welcome to the podcast, Erin.
Yes, welcome. It's a long time coming. We've been talking about this for a long time.
Yeah, we have.
And now you're here.
And now I'm here.
And now's a particularly good time to talk to you, Erin. So we've had the pleasure of working with Erin for a long time, but we've also watched you been building out your coaching practice for the last few months and get a lot more traction there. So it's kind of an exciting time to get to talk to you about this and get to showcase what you've been up to, because there's a lot of cool things going on. But first of all, we wanted to talk a little bit about something that you've talked about a lot with us and helped us kind of work with and helped a lot of people with, is the idea of autopilot and where that appears in our life. So I'm curious what that means to you, Erin, and where that came from.
Yeah, where that came from. Yeah, so I was shaped by a challenging past, and in that challenging past, I operated as if I operated on reaction, shall we say, operated on what other people, other entities have encouraged or mandated or strongly suggested that people behave in certain ways as they grow up in America. And with that came this reactive nature to please, to perform, to be somebody that I didn't realize I wasn't being true to myself. And I operated that way for decades, not really realizing that there is a gap between who I am and how I show up. And I didn't realize that gap existed. And in that gap, I realized that there is an opportunity to improve my own growth and well-being, my own relationships, and my ability to, be effective at being a servant leader to those that I support in life. And I think that's, and I think by me being able to find that I was on autopilot and realizing that, I was able to take action to address it and to close the gap that I felt was demanding that I be wider and that I be more disconnected from who I am, by way of trying to perform, trying to please, trying to be somebody for other people than I wasn't for myself. And so that's the gap that I really want to help address for clients as part of yourcoachthroughchange.com. And it's really not just helping people get by and working with the autopilot. We're always going to have that. It's just in our inherent nature as human beings that have conscious awareness. But to use that conscious awareness and to be equipped to have the tools to lead yourself with clarity from a different place, from not autopilot, from not reacting into intention, is possible. And people have conscious choice to do that.
Yeah, that's really important. And you and I have been on part of that same journey through that, which has helped a lot to understand what that is and how to stop it, and how to choose how we show up, as opposed to just kind of letting the autopilot run all over, and then just couch it as, well, this is just who I am. Everybody else needs to adapt. And this is the results I'm always going to get because this is who I am.
Yeah. It's just, and to your point, it's who I am. They're just the habits and assumptions that I do every day. So why would that need to change? Even though those habits and assumptions could, in theory, be self-sabotaging.
And I think in practice, mostly, yes.
Yes. Yeah.
It's a little bit like the definition of insanity. It's doing the same thing and expecting different results. It's like, if we keep doing the same thing because this is who I am, but then we expect different results and we're frustrated when the results are not changing. Yeah. Well, where does the change need to happen?
Yeah.
What are we missing here?
Yeah, exactly. And some of the things that I experienced, I think we all of us on this call experienced the, how is it that we can truly shift behavior of people if they're not even realizing that, self-reinforcing sabotaging behavior is something that's not serving you, and your own awareness you don't even realize that it's happening. And I think if you're unable to talk to people about what's happening inside them, their mindsets in particular, and what that looks like for them, then you're not meeting people where they are. And that gap is just going to continue to widen, and they'll still operate on autopilot, is how I see it.
So I'm curious for both of you. We've all done some coaching. We've all done through the same program actually at some point. And I'm curious how you guys think about helping other people raise their awareness of these things and start to understand that they do have some of that choice. How have those conversations gone for you, and what do you find is either effective to help people with that or blockers that get in the way?
Hmm. Yeah, go ahead, Christina.
No, I was going to say I'll let Aaron answer that one.
I'm going to throw you guys both a hard one.
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes back to us realizing that, autopilot is not who we are. It's just the reactions that we do as an impulse, as a learned behavior, learned habit, as a mode of protection through survival. And because there was a lot of unpredictability as a young human, and we had to learn to adapt and be able to keep ourselves safe in those moments. And I think as part of that adaptation, we can build sabotaging habits that don't serve us because the context changes, the needs change, the relationships that we have in life change. And I think if people can recognize that is a past behavior and know that there are tactics, tools that they can employ to enable them to choose differently, I think people would want to be able to learn more about that. I think they would want to be able to realize, do I have to be trapped by my mind? Am I always constantly behaving and reacting to every stimulus that comes to me in my world? No. And to know that you have that option is the first opening conversation that I would have with somebody, to know that authenticity isn't that authenticity that you're looking to connect with isn't it. At least in my experience, your past experience contributes to that authenticity, but it doesn't make you who you are.
Definitely. Yeah, I find that going through the journey myself, it's how I do anything actually. If I'm trying to teach or share my knowledge, I have to understand it myself first, and then I can share the knowledge. I can't just read something or know it theoretically and then just share it. But I think especially when it comes to behavior change, experiencing it myself then helps me understand, oh, here's the benefit, here's my journey, and then sharing that journey, sharing like, hey, like I've gone through this journey and this is what I've learned. And I find that a lot of times that opens up the possibility for somebody to think like, oh, wait, like I notice a difference and she's sharing her journey. Maybe I can be on that same journey, or maybe there's a journey for me too. And it's more of that, not imposing on people like, hey, you need to change and here's a solution and just do what I say. Stop being like you. But it's more about creating a different reality and showing what it is. And a lot of it there, I think therapy is a great example. But when you see how therapy can help others, you're like, I'm kind of curious how it could help me. I want to try it out too. And so having that, and I know, Aaron, for you, as you're building your practice, you're sharing a lot of your journey. You're sharing a lot of what you're going through in your marketing and social media with the world, so that it's not really about, I'm perfect and you all need to change. Good luck. And here's a solution. It's more like, hey, here's my journey. apparently. Here's my journey. Here's what I go through every single day. Here's what I have gone through. Here's the different outcomes that I am now reaching by understanding that, yes, there's an autopilot, which most people probably know that as a theory, as a concept. And like, yes, we all have autopilot. But it's that gap between the understanding, the knowledge, and the implementation of how do I actually stop it? Not through words, but through mental fitness, through actions, through something that I do differently every single day that will get me there. And one day I'll wake up and realize, oh, wait, that's not triggering anymore. Like, I'm responding differently in this situation, and look at that situation. And you just kind of believe that you're going to get there, and then you get there.
Yeah. And to build on that, I would say, like, we are all our inherent nature to be able to implement that, to be able to be in the pause. Yes, you're in the pause, but what next? Your inherent nature as a human being is ease and flow. That is what you are. That's who you are. And your reactions, your stress reactions, your self-sabotaging are just your own. They're not. So in order to access to be able to pause, be able to, whether it be being present with your five senses, moving to a place, doing any activity that puts you back to your center will put you in a place of ease and flow and groundedness to where you actually have the space to choose differently versus react to something that is not serving you. And so I think that's so critical to helping meet people where they are, to help people realize that, you have the internal capacity to change. You just have to be able to access parts of yourself that are open and, when I say open, your whole being is engaged in the process of being. You're engaged in the process of being, not doing, I guess is what I'm trying to say, is that's the difference in moving to being versus moving to doing and reacting. I think there's that difference is kind of where I think people could really benefit from accessing as part of just moderating their reactions to life and overcoming life's challenges.
Yeah. And you can see both the kind of general nature of us having our set patterns that we might not challenge, and then we end up doing things that we aren't necessarily super conscious about and are just kind of doing them on repeat. But there's also the societal pressure of you should be doing something, and even rest is like a pause before you can get more productivity done. And there's this push to do, and that I think ends up multiplying the effect of our desire to do rather than be, and feel like we have to do rather than be.
Absolutely. And what I would also say to that too is, and I talk about this on my website and also on my post, is this idea about performative resilience, like this concept that, I've developed this need because of society, because of my own internal expectations, that somehow I need to just keep going. I need to project confidence. I need to project competence rather. And I need to show that I'm being in control and I have the answer and I'm not, but at the same time, internally you're running on empty, and you don't realize that's happening until you're having breakdowns. Until, you can't get up in the morning because you feel dread in your body. And that's something that is burnout can continue to build on those experiences, and it will completely disconnect you from your true self. You won't have clarity. You won't have self-direction. Your judgment will be affected. And you can't lead yourself.
Yeah. Well, and then it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, because the more you perform the way you think you should perform, the more you strengthen the autopilot, the more you don't get the results that you want, which then burns you out, which then leads you to perform even more. And it's just this cycle that never ends. And it's that pause. It's a pausing, like, hey, I don't like those outcomes. Where do they originate from? And they originate from these, the autopilot, this inner critic, these default ways of looking at the world and of responding and reacting that, yes, there's a component that served us in the past that may serve us in some situations, but then it's the dark side. When you get to the dark side is where you lose the control, and now somebody else is driving. And then you get to destination and you're like, this is not where I wanted to go. I'm here again.
Yeah.
Why am I here again? And I'm like, well, then stop turning on the autopilot. Get it behind the wheel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's hard. I mean, I think one of the things that really helped me to interrupt and then pause. So interrupt that autopilot, and then this a pause is to have language to it. Understand that this isn't who I am. So, for example, we all judge. We all judge I feel like every minute of the day, either ourselves or circumstances. And that is the sort of the impetus for what then puts you into that self-reinforcing spiral that you talked about. That, if I'm judging others, they're going to feel judged, and their reactions to my judgment will then be reacting to my judgment, what I'm doing. And then both of us will react to the situation. And then it'll become amplified and become problematic for team cohesion, relationship connection, whatever it may be. And for you to know that, for example, the judge is not who you are, it's just a reaction, is something that is really powerful and helpful to know that I can distance and create some distance between that and myself. And I can pause and I can say, this reaction is just a reaction. It's not who I am. So I can then pivot and make a different choice in that moment.
I remember early in my therapy journey, my therapist introduced me to the idea of like changing we often identify with emotions. We say, I am angry. I am sad.
Yeah.
I am like, it is our identity. Like that is who we are. But there are two levels beyond that. There's I am sad. Then there's I am feeling sad, where you start to notice, no, it's a feeling that I'm having. Then there's the third one, which is like, I notice that I am feeling sad. And then you put yourself in kind of more the observer position of, in that kind of more mindfulness area of I'm noticing this thing that's coming up for me, instead of I am it, I am controlled by it, everything about my world is angry right now. It is now I'm noticing that I feel angry. And now you've put yourself in that exact space you're talking about, Aaron, where you have a chance to interrupt that and say, oh, that's not who I am. That's not my identity. That's not everything that is happening right now. That is just a reaction that happens to be coming up. And I might have other choices than just autopilot running with that the way that I would normally do.
Yeah. Yeah. And what that gives you is, a decision based on grounded judgment and not fear, where you're not being taken by your emotions. Or this performative need to feel certain, or this need to have the answer. I can tell you that was the single biggest challenge that I had in my career, was this performative nature, this feeling that I wasn't being authentic with what I was saying, thinking, doing, and none of it was in alignment. And I felt this cognitive dissonance that my beliefs were completely in conflict. And it became so challenging for me to operate daily, to be engaged and feel like I'm delivering value, that I got so burned out and so panicky that it just didn't feel right anymore. And then I had to make a decision, because at that point it's like it just becomes a it degrades you and erodes your sense of self, and just being a human being. It just feels like I always just make this joke. I sold my soul to corporate. And it's. I think everybody can identify with that. And that's the feeling that we're talking about right now. This autopilot of nature that we all feel like we have to do, because that's just how that's just the expectation. That's the norm.
It does. It's exhausting. I've been talking about it recently with a friend who's also a coach. And I've described it as, it's like swimming upstream and hitting every single rock as you're doing that. So you're already exhausted because you're swimming upstream, and you're just getting destroyed with everything that gets in the way in that river. And it's, and the opposite, it's, first of all, swim down the stream, stop swimming upstream. But it doesn't mean that you just kind of relax and let go and then hit every rock on the way down, because you're like, well, I'm giving up. Like, you still have agency, which is that stopping that autopilot, understanding the language, understanding, how you're actually showing up, why it's not working, when it's not working, And that is like, yes, go downstream, take the pause, relax have awareness of what's around you, relax when you can, and also, use your arms and legs and move to not hit every rock going down. That's the choice. It's the awareness of,
Totally.
I'm not just going to close my eyes, lay down and let go, but I don't have to do it so hard the other way.
Yeah. And what I would add to that too is when you have that choice, that is why a coach is so critical to help you make kind of where the coach is there to help you find your own answers. We're not there to direct you, but I think in that moment, you have that space and clarity to be able to make that conscious choice when you didn't have it before because you were taken over by the reactions that that are shaping your autopilot that come from all of the need to feel safe from all of your past experiences, the things that you had to do to adapt that no longer are working in this current context, And I think that, unfortunately, at least in my experience in corporate, is that's how people are operating all the time. They're constantly just reacting to what other potentially, looking up for threats, essentially, and reacting upstream.
So they're just exhausted.
While swimming upstream.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I like that you brought up the judge and how we judge all the time, because that's what we've learned in positive intelligence is that like we judge all the time. We're humans, we judge. And taking the shame out of that. So the goal is not to stop judging because that's not possible. It's like the goal is not to stop thinking when you're meditating. Not possible. Your mind is not going to stop. The goal is to realize that what you're doing and choose differently. And so I have, as I go around the world, as I go around about my day, I catch the judge so many times where something happens. I'm like, oh, I'm judging. Okay. And that pause allows me to have a space to then think about, oh, okay, how am I judging this? Which one of my accomplices to the judge is showing up? It's, increasing the judge. Is it like, what's my reaction default after I judge? Is it to please? Because my pleaser is now shouting and taking over the driving? Is it the, high performer? I need to perform more? Is it the hypervigilance? I need to be vigilant that this may be a dangerous situation in whatever form that comes up. And even just going through those motions helps just stop. It's the hand on the stove. It's like I put the hand on the stove, like, oh, my hand is on the stove. It's getting burnt. Let me remove it before I lose my hand. I don't have to keep it on the stove. I can remove it. Exactly.
Tired of having this burnt hand all the time.
Yeah. And it's this unconscious suffering that you're causing yourself by keeping your hand on that stove.
It's a signal.
When it's just a signal,
I'm judging.
What you just said, I'm judging. That's just a signal. When I judge, I could feel my chest tighten. And so what this has helped me do is just pay attention to my body before my mind, because that's what's going to signal first anyway. And I never used to have that. I never used to be able to separate myself from the emotion, like you were saying, Alex. Is like just it was so difficult to put guardrails around my behavior, I guess, if that makes sense. Like creating boundaries and being able to know what's going to keep me safe and others safe. Like just all of the things that happen when you react and you regret it. And that happened to me so much, even in work. But yeah, and one of I know that this isn't like a positive intelligence plug fully, but it is such a massive transformative tool framework to put an operating system behind how you go about your day and know that you can make those changes. We're talking very abstract right now, but like just go to positiveintelligence.com. We'll figure it out. But yeah, it's great. It's just such a transformative way of looking at how to build your mental fitness, not your mental health, but really to be able to ultimately snap back from those periods of life's challenges that normally would keep your hand on the stove and you'd be spiraling. where now with the training that it gives you an opportunity to choose ease and flow, to access that part of yourself that's always there.
And that's one thing that I've noticed in coaching. One thing I've always appreciated about the coaching or therapy is that when you start to realize that, you start to say, I want to change this. I don't want to be, this way. I'm tired of having this reaction. Then there's the next portion is frustration at the number of times it will come up. So you start to notice it,
Yeah.
and then you're frustrated at like, nope, I'm doing this again. I'm doing this again. And one thing I really appreciated about coaching and therapy was that
Yes.
getting back into those, you have somebody else there who would confirm for you that like that happens and that's okay. And what would you like to do differently next time? And it's very different than most of our upbringing in school and work, where it's like you made a mistake, and now let's all
put her on
remember
board.
that you made a mistake and make sure we can't trust you next time or whatever it is. Yeah, keep it in the spotlight, and having that knowledge that that's just part of the transformation. That it is more difficult immediately when you start to notice it, and then it gets a little easier over time, and then it becomes habitual, and then you don't even notice it, and then that's okay, and that there are people like with you in that journey validating that you don't have to have done it perfectly. Just because you notice like, oh, I do this doesn't mean that the next time it comes up and forevermore you'll do it differently. There are just going to be certain leanings that we might move there, and it's okay that happens. That's natural, and that we don't have to feel like, oh yes, I burnt my hand on the stove again, and yes, I didn't want to do that, but I'm more aware of it. It was slower this time. I didn't have. I was faster to take my hand off this time. Next time, I might not touch the stove. There will be moments in the future where it happens again, and that's okay. We just know it's there, and we'll continue to move around it. And that was a huge portion for me of like letting go of the perfectionism of needing to understand what's right, and then either you do it all the time or you failed.
Zero-sum game. You either become perfect,
and
or immediately because you have the knowledge. Oh, that's it. You're doomed. Might as well not try.
Oh, that idea.
Yeah. And that's the self-sabotaging thought process that I think, default to. I think, at least for me, it's the same thing where it's, I'm hypervigilant for threats. At the same time, I'm hypervigilant in that in those threats, to maybe not even just the threats. I'm hypervigilant and I can read the room a little bit better than others because of that strength of staying out of this judgment aspect of what others are doing, and more around what how I can turn this into a positive versus negative. So I think there's that duality between those two that everybody deals with. So I think that's a challenge for everybody.
Hypervigilance is a great example because it's that's one that's like, hey, it's an adaptation that did help me. If you're hypervigilant, it's probably because there was you existed at some point or for maybe a long time in a place where there were a lot more threats, and so you had to be hypervigilant to try and stay ahead of the curve as much as possible. So it's something that did serve you for a long time, and if you let it continue into places where there aren't as many threats, then you might perceive things that aren't actually as threatening as threats, and you have reactions that you aren't happy with or that don't help you. And that's where we slowly start to make that change. And to your point, Aaron, there's still like a lot of superpower in that. It can still be incredibly helpful. There are moments where it's useful as long as you're consciously using like, oh, I'm aware of this. So, hey, here's something's coming up. As long as it's not doing exactly what we've been talking about, where it takes it right onto autopilot and, now I assume this is a threat and now I'm reacting in ways that I don't want to react.
Yeah, that's a huge difference because there are moments, especially when you have the language, there are moments where you realize like, oh, I'm hypervigilant in this moment. And even making the choice of thinking, oh, I need to be. This is a good moment for the superpower. So let's just monitor how that superpower is being used so that I don't fly off and change universe when I'm just trying to fly to the next town.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think also too, it's and something to kind of impress upon people too is that like the mental fitness is a lifelong, just like physical fitness, like your muscles will atrophy. And with that, when it comes to mental fitness, your reactions to life, if you have an atrophied muscle, you will react to everything in life and not come from a place of intention. And I think if you quit, you just have to be in the gym. You have to work it out. Otherwise, the strength to manage life challenges will be harder. Uh, but yeah, so I think all in all, I think for me, I think the need to provide this as a tool for people to know that this is something that you can work on daily. It's not a personality trait. It's a skill that can be trained. It's something that I believe can help people close the gap from who they are versus how they show up. And I think fundamentally that's what will help people make change, will help them reduce the noise, have clarity, move forward, be able to come from a place of ease and flow that is calm, clear, from a calm, clear place. And I think that is needed more than ever now.
So
Across
you brought up
industries.
a good point earlier, saying we're talking theory in a lot of things, but we also have the practical experience of our own changes, and since we're talking about mindset and behavior changes, what are some examples that you've seen in how you show up differently now?
So my husband he's a hyper rational, hyperachiever type of person. He likes to find he likes to rationalize away instead of not connected with emotions at times. But what I would say is, in terms of my mindset and behavior change has been around not reacting to his what now he is experiencing and what I believe is burnout. And so as a partner, as a person that is there for him when he needs to decompress and share what's on his heart, much of what he has uh, you know exhibited is somebody that's having challenges at work. And so one of the things that I've learned through this theory of mental fitness, this framework, is you know your closest partner is your greatest trainer. The person that is the person that causes you the deepest reactions, um, because they are the closest to you, you are the most vulnerable with them. It's going to cause the partner to react maybe more intensely because of that closeness and that connection. What I've learned through mental fitness is to come from a place of empathy first. And certainly, as we've been talking about, recognizing that in those moments when he's reacting the way he is, that I don't judge it, that I come from a place of empathy, and that involves me grounding myself through being in a place where I can connect with my five senses in the moment and not be responding to what he's saying. That's a very hard thing to do. It takes training, like we were mentioning. However, it is something that it enables me to hold space for him in the moments where he's erratic and not being rational in his thinking process. And I can come from a place of understanding and help him explore what options he has available to him, what actions he can take that serve him in that moment when he is looking to me as an inspiration, as a place of calm, as a presence that is able to hear him in those moments where he isn't feeling hurt and where he's feeling unsafe. And I'm able to give that to him. And before I was dismissive. I was taking it as an affront on, kind of, his inability to show up as a human being. I was bringing in my own preconceived notions about what is the best way to go and approach certain situations in his work. And I wasn't coming from a place of openness and understanding. I was coming from a place of judgment and rationalization. I wasn't there for him in those moments. So I think, to answer your question, long story short, is that it really is about showing up differently and coming from a place of grounded presence and peace, and knowing what that feels like in those moments. Because when you're on autopilot, you don't realize that you're doing something and reacting as you always do. And instead, it's taught me differently. And he also notices that, and over time, since 12 weeks of me doing this, he now comes to me from a place of ease and and comes with questions and how do I do this versus reacting and responding to what he is experiencing. That has changed our relationship and has really helped to open up what's possible in our conversation versus reacting to every stimulus.
A great example. And I love that you pointed out also that things like your partner is your greatest trainer, the people who you're closest with. These are the paradoxes we find in working like with these. We assume these are our closest people, the easiest people to talk to sometimes, but sometimes that's the most challenging. Sometimes that's the closest thing that we have to our greatest immediate training possibility, our closest, our opportunity, I should say, yes, our ability to do that. And so there are little paradoxes of you start to understand these things, and it can be a little bit more painful at first. You start to work with people who you're close to, and that can be almost harder than trying it out in less high stakes situations. But they all are our best opportunities to really practice what we learn and getting into that pause space and interrupting that autopilot. And that's a great example of changing the relationship of your relationship.
Well,
Mm-hmm.
and we've
Yep.
seen it even in this room by having the same language and the same understanding. Like we can almost anticipate, like if I say things this way, their autopilot may kick in, their critic, their default may kick in. So how do I change how I say things, or how do I provide more context so that I'm not triggering what I know it's right there, ready to default the thought and judge.
Yeah, and that training aspect is because it's not just going to be a one and done when you open up the conversation. Those feelings are going to come back, and so it's the training aspect. Your point, Alex, too, is like just it's the groundedness. It's the putting yourself before. Like what I do is I will go and I will, before I know I have to have a hard conversation with anybody, I know that I need to spend 10 minutes on minimum just going through grounding exercises before I even talk, because I know myself. I know I react. I know my emotions get dysregulated more quickly than others, I think, but that's a judgment on myself, And so I have to release all of that and just, it's hard. It's not in our nature. It is in our nature to do it, but it's not easy. It's something that you really have to force yourself to do in order to anticipate, to your point.
Yeah, it's a little bit like, using your non-dominant hand for things that you use your dominant hand on. You actually have to consciously stop and switch the toothpaste, switch the fork, use the other hand, and it's going to be uncomfortable, but you have to do it over and over and over and over and over again. You can't just do it once and be like, success. I actually brushed my teeth. I didn't, brush my nose with my left hand today. It's like, need to do it again, so that it's going to take me 10 minutes instead of 2. But it's how do I put myself in the situation?
Totally. Yeah. And one other thing too, as you're saying is I'm like, the biggest challenge with doing that is to pay attention to switching the toothpaste and being present with how you take action on things. What I've discovered is it's really challenging to do that when I fill my brain with other things during the day. So for example, when I am on my phone and I go to my phone in those quiet 10-second moments, where in reality, I could have, if I had trained, if I was focusing on sensations and I was really focusing on changing the toothpaste and switching the fork to the spoon and being able to be intentional with those different things and making changes, it's harder for me to get there when I'm so distracted with information that I'm overwhelmed with at any given point during the day, that prevents me from actually taking action and pause. Because then I'm in that pause, I'm going to my phone or I'm doing other things like my kids. I don't have kids, but there's just another distraction that I can easily go to because it's the easier thing, or it's the dopamine thing. That I have to call out because I still struggle with that now. I will always struggle with that. I think as humans, I think we're going to go to the easiest thing. And so you have to be aware of an example as a phone, as a distraction. So what are your that are preventing you from choosing differently.
Yeah,
In that
notifications.
pause.
I don't know what I did, but I got a new phone and somehow it's synced to my watch, but it's not. I don't get any notifications anymore. They're there, they happen, but I leave my phone wherever in places, and I try not to look at it unless I absolutely need to. And that's when I realized, like, oh, I missed 3 calls, I have 15 text messages, people had questions. And then I think about it, and I was like, well, nobody died, everybody's safe. Yeah, it's fine. Nothing, bad happened, because an hour later, and I see all these things now. But not having that distraction of the constant notifications, which I turned off. Sound, well, I never turn the sound on my phone ever, unless it is an emergency. So it's always on silence. But I turned off sound notification on most of the stuff years ago, and I never turned it back on, because the sound, it's just this constant reminder of, oh, here's another thing, here's another thing, here's another thing, here's another thing. And it's like most of the day I turn on do not disturb when I meditate in the morning. I forget to turn it off, and then I get things when I get things. And I know that my kids and my family are the only emergency contacts that can get through. And I tell everybody, it's like, if you actually need me because it's an emergency, you need to call. Do not send a text message, because that's still not something I will check consistently.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there was I think some of the undercurrent of this is, and I read this and I don't remember, I forget, but yeah, just being bored. Like boredom, I'm sure I've read this recently. It's just like we all just can't, or we have a difficult time being bored, and bored doesn't necessarily mean there's, like you were saying, Alex, right? It's like I feel bored and I am bored. And there's those differences there that, what do you do with your time? Like, how are you, is the boredom generating awareness, or is it generating more reaction, and more, feeling the need to do something? So, one of the things I've caught myself doing on autopilot is just dithering. Like, I'll just grab a piece of paper and turn around in my house and look around, because I was waiting on the next thing because I saw something on my floor. I picked it up and I was like, I don't want that on my floor. But then I'm thinking, well, I need to put this in the trash can, but I also need to do 3 other things while I'm doing it. So let me throw this on here and go to the next thing. And, it's just that not wanting to have, pause. That is the training aspect that we keep going back to force, no, not force, empower you to move to more intention with your time. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a good point. And I saw some comedian recently who was talking about how mindfulness wasn't a
Yes.
word in the 80s. He's like, because we didn't have phones. So
Yeah.
anytime you were just waiting for a bus or sitting on a bus, you had nothing else to do. It was all mindful. It was all a mindful moment. There just was more pause. And I think that the push notifications are basically the antithesis of that. There's always something that you can check. There's always something that you can feel like you have to do or feel like you have to respond to. And until you have like a forcing mechanism like you, Christina, where your watch stopped syncing with it for a while. So now there was no notifications by technological accident, or we set that more on purpose, get like a brick function or whatever to help just eliminate those. It's not until we do that we start to experience that initial discomfort and eventual more space for some conscious choice.
So tell us about your coach through change. Who are your clients? Yes.
Also, your coach through change is Aaron's coaching practice, since we haven't mentioned that yet. So for everybody who knows.
Yeah, your coach through change. So yeah, I mean, my client is a consultant, so that can be, there's a broad cross section of consultants out there. There's management consultants, business consultants, leadership, all the things. So any consultants really, and when I say consultants, they're all high performers. A lot of us like to say we're all high performers. And we probably are. I would say consulting,
you don't make it into consulting if you're not a high
performer.
No, it's a high anxiety field.
Yeah, yeah. And we're not, I think in consulting, I definitely know in consulting in my 12 years of and working in consulting that
Oh,
it
yes.
is chew you up and spit you out. There are, if I think about Hollywood and there, it's a system built to chew up and spit out promising young actors. I kind of put that parallel with consulting at times. And what's important with that in both of those is that they all flame out. And they,
Most,
not all of
which is
them,
why
but some
most
flame out because they
leave
were not
consulting
supported
because
by
it's not sustainable.
most leave consulting. Yeah, the system, it's not sustainable. The system is supporting performance
Mhm.
because, and that's changing, the billable hour. Now, with all of the AI and all the things happening, it's going to be even more pressure because it's going to be outcome based, not process based. And that in and of itself is going to create a whole host of self-sabotaging thoughts and behaviors and from consultants that have their identity fundamentally affected because the billable hour was what was their bread and butter, was what showed value, what clients expected because we're paying this much money, you give us this result. But now it's gray and it's very nebulous for people, and that brings up all kinds of insecurities. Absolutely, with a consultant. So and it goes back to closing the gap from who you are to how you perform. And with consulting, you're always performing, and at times it can create this sense of emptiness inside that um, takes you away from your presence, that takes you away from all of the things that can really influence your decision. And so, unfortunately, what I ended up having to deal with is I ended up reacting and pleasing and performing and just making sure that the rooms were constantly satisfied. And it took me away from the core work of what I did, which was to um, promote behavioral change as part of my work in change management. And over time, I just struggled with feeling like what I did mattered. And so I burned out. And I said that earlier. And what led me to your coach through change was helping people close that gap and helping people move from presence, having that presence, being able to, and with that presence, being able to become aware of your mental habits, those things that are causing you to run on autopilot that ultimately make you feel empty and not feeling like you have purpose or passion in your life. And then from there, and being able to understand and being aware of those mental patterns, we help you create capacity. Recognizing those patterns is really only the beginning, but learning, as we've talked about, to shift them in the moment takes practice, takes regular exercise, takes coaching and support, as well as
Yes.
that coaching can help bring you to choice. So we have presence, we have capacity, then we have
Yes.
choice. And I'll say conscious choice, conscious choice.
Mhm.
There's difference between choice and reacting and not having in your choice. And then there's conscious choice where you're aware of the choice you're making and the implications of that and all of those things. So you're really pulling more of yourself into making those decisions because you have the capacity. Um, and so, that's part of what I do. I help people, I coach people on those live challenges, help them have new reactions to replace those old reactions. And then as a result, you begin to notice, others begin to notice. And with that, you get momentum because you understand what your patterns are. You can uncover why those patterns are happening and you can interrupt them in the moment. And I think that all of that thing, all of that presence, capacity, conscious choice, and momentum is the sort of the framework at a very high level, I'm explaining this very high level to help people get to a place where they're rooted in understanding their self-sabotaging thoughts and behaviors and actions. Um, and then I help move them into the origin work. Where did those trigger, those self-sabotaging behaviors come from? They came from your childhood. So let's go down to where the energy of where that came from. Let's unpack all of what's behind that, those limiting beliefs that you have about yourself, those assumptions, all of those, self-sabotaging behaviors that keep you from your most authentic self. So I think that's really, my focus with Your Coach to Change. And I think ultimately consultants who have been built to perform are so far away
Yes,
from that they
absolutely,
need a coach that'll help them get there.
definitely, very much needed. Yeah, because it's there. It's that sentence that we hear all the time, like, you get in your own way. But then it's like, okay, what does it mean, and what do I do about
What does
it?
that mean?
What if I don't want to get in my own way all the time?
Oh, no, I feel about it.
So
Yeah.
that's absolutely needed. Um,
Yeah.
well, yeah. So a couple of last questions for you. One is, what is your definition of authenticity? Which you've actually talked about authenticity throughout. How would you define it?
So showing up as you truly are, not how others think you need to be.
Yes.
I think it's just it's being real when it's uncomfortable. It's alignment between how you think, feel, and do. Like, it's all of those things, I think. And then, as an example, one of the things that I have done from in the past is,
Hmm.
now I'm saying I
Mhm.
don't know when I don't know versus I do know and I have the answer to it. Kind of how that performative that I spoke about. It's being able to raise disagreement with someone when it happens in the moment versus just it's easier to go along. And it's those types of things I think are so important to um, to help feel like you are empowered in life as a human being and that what you say matters and you matter. I think that's so important. And what I've learned, particularly out of consulting after the last year that I was in, because I've not been in consulting for the last year. So I've had a lot of time to really kind of reflect.
Yes.
So that's been me.
Great
That's
definition.
authenticity for me.
And where can people find you?
Multiple places on yourcoachthroughchange.com. I'm on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn.
And we'll have all those in the show notes.
Those are all the places.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. This was great. Appreciate the
Yes.
conversation.